As expected, Max Verstappen and Red Bull returned to winning ways in the land of the rising sun. There, the Milton Keynes team secured a 1-2 finish, with Max driving a clean and clinical race, and Checo once again demonstrating his ability to brawl and do the dirty work to fight through the field after early strategy shifts. While it was a dominant performance from Red Bull, it was by no means a quiet race, with an absolute smorgasbord of strategy and unpredictable conditions creating the perfect canvas on which a thoroughly entertaining race could unfold. Now, I might be biased, as Suzuka is one of my favourite circuits on the calendar, but this race seemingly had a little bit of everything. An early crash, changeable weather conditions across the weekend, and strategy so split it would make a banana blush. Suzuka made the early alarm clock worthwhile, and proved why it's seen an extension to its tenure in Formula 1 for the foreseeable future. However, it wasn't all peachy, and the highs and lows were had in equal measure, and while Red Bull and Ferrari made the most of the weekend, Mercedes had yet another stinker, bogged down in the lower points positions and being handed breadcrumbs by mistakes. Want to know how the race at Suzuka unfolded? Some teams will be walking away with high hopes for the sprint weekend in China, whereas others will feel trapped in a season-long disaster of their own making. Early red flags and Suzuka go together like Bernie Ecclestone and poor tax hygiene, following not only a start which looked like he was in a Ford Focus compared to the rest of the field, and a weirdly slow first corner, Daniel Ricciardo found himself in the melee with the Q1 exiting cars and P14 Alex Albon. Given the baffling weather this weekend, which left most drivers and teams unprepared for the performance of the tyres and the grip they'd find entering the infamously crash-happy Turn 2, a crash at Suzuka this weekend was to be expected. Ricciardo, whose eyes were locked on the approaching Lance Stroll, unknowingly shut the door on the fast-approaching Alex Albon, which subsequently delivered both drivers to the scene of the crash. While both drivers were okay, this immediately threw up two questions. 1. Can Williams afford any more incidents this season? Given we're only in the 4th round and the prior setbacks the team has faced, yet another high-velocity incident could really set them back and scupper their potential later on in the season. And 2. Just how much more punishment can Daniel Ricciardo's career take? Following the first 3 rounds of the season, Ricciardo sits pointless, and he really hasn't shown much potential of changing that. Given that Liam Lawson's super sub performance is still fresh both in the public and paddock's memory, we're sure that there are already murmurings around the team about it being a case of not if he steps into that second RB seat, but when. Given how quickly he got up to speed last season, it's not all that far of a stretch to say that the team won't exactly suffer from him adapting to the sport, but getting him in the car as early as possible gives him the best chance of utilizing the car to its full potential for as much of the season as possible. As we mentioned before, any preconceptions that the teams had about strategy was out the window before the race even started, though Bernie Collins on the coverage made light work of the few considerations thrown up by the red flag live on air. The tyres, however, were a real step into the unknown, with all teams but McLaren and Mercedes not saving back a spare set of hards, which in the surprisingly brutal Suzuka heat had the potential to prove pivotal. The reality for Mercedes, however, became apparent as the TV coverage turned into a montage of cars overtaking both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, with Hamilton demanding a change of strategy before the tyres even hit what was deemed the necessary window for a 2-stop. To add insult to injury, having let teammate George Russell past partway through the stint, Hamilton was left out to suffer his failing front right tyre an extra lap despite there seemingly being enough of a gap for the two drivers to double stack. Towards the end of the race, Mercedes swapped onto the faster medium tyres and looked to be a real threat on Piastri and Alonso in front of them. However, when the moment came, George Russell behaved like an absolute brainlet. Where every other driver saw sense to hold back on the chicane, secure a good exit, and use the DRS on the main straight, Russell couldn't help himself from sending it into one of the most cumbersome sections on the circuit, forcing Piastri off the track and scuppering his advantage over both cars ahead, gifting Alonso P6, who then displayed his gamesmanship as he intentionally kept Piastri within DRS. Given that this is the second desperate move in the closing laps in 2 races from Russell, and the third in recent memory, he's starting to make a name for himself as a driver that makes some pretty rash decisions when he sees his race slipping away from him. Hamilton by now will surely be looking to his future, as yet another disappointing race weekend in black has seemingly numbed the British driver out following 3 years of abject misery. Having hit out hard against the team mid-race demanding a change of strategy, Hamilton looked absolutely dejected following the race, as he said, "A real challenge today. I think I picked up a bit of damage. I had understeer for the first stint. The hard tyre was pretty bad, medium tyre was much better. In general though, the car was just pretty bad here." It seemed that the Mercedes team were doomed to yet another lackluster finish. However, a lock-up into the chicane on the penultimate lap scuppered Piastri's chances, with his misfortune gifting Russell a P7 finish. While McLaren secured a tidy points haul, stretching their legs in both the Constructors' and Drivers' Championship, the penultimate lap slip-up from Piastri concluded the weekend on somewhat of a sour note, even though we have a feeling that it was due to his tyres being ruined from the previous incident with Russell. Reflecting on his weekend, Piastri was expectedly measured, however he couldn't hide his disappointment as he said, "Not really for the positions that I'd want to be fighting for sure, just struggled a bit with tyres. I think we didn't really have the pace of the cars around us, so we just need to dig into why a bit. I could tell by the way he was using energy, I could tell he was trying to keep me in DRS, so George couldn't pass me and attack him. I knew exactly what he was doing, but I just made a bit of a mistake into the last chicane, locked up a bit, and that was it." While clearly McLaren can make strides forward through the season, their frustration of being cemented in third is clear. They'll be hoping that their first major upgrades, expected in the early European rounds, will have a major impact. For Piastri, it wasn't only the car that he deemed could be improved on, as he looked internally too. "I think today showed we still have some work to do. We're clearly not quite at the level of Ferrari yet, so just need to find a little bit more. I think also for myself, it's not been the greatest of weekends, so also need to look a bit internally, but I think, for sure, we need to find a bit of pace in the car as well." It wasn't only Mercedes who attempted a major roll of the dice, with Ferrari splitting the strategy between their drivers. Sainz was on a more conventional strategy, mirroring the Red Bulls and McLarens around him. However, Charles Leclerc squeezed every lap possible out of the mediums he restarted on. All was seemingly going well for Leclerc as he kept Perez behind him convincingly. That was until a wide moment at the Degner corners which opened the door for the second Red Bull car. It didn't mean his race was over, however, as unlike Lando Norris, who pitted at the same time, Leclerc managed to get out of the pits ahead of George Russell. While it wasn't long-lived, the Mercedes splitting the cars allowed Leclerc to reopen a 1.5 lead over his rival du jour, which Norris never really recovered from. Following the strategy fully unfolding, it was seeming like it would be a fight to the finish with his teammate Carlos Sainz, who started 4 places ahead and had the favourable strategy over the course of the race. Despite Sainz comfortably dispatching his teammate, both drivers had incredibly commendable races on their respective strategies, which saw Leclerc on a 2-stop marathon and Sainz on a 3-stop sprint. Team boss Fred Vasseur commended the team and the drivers in his post-race interview. "It was a very good Sunday for the team. We had a good recovery after a bit of a difficult qualifying. We had a strong Sunday with a good strategy and good time management. If we want to do a better weekend, we have to improve the Saturday more." Ferrari look an all-new team under the shepherding of Vasseur, with the clowns in Ferrari suit memes yet to make an appearance this season outside of the pre-season decision to drop Carlos Sainz in favour of Hamilton. When asked about the shift in fortunes in the team, especially strategy-wise, Vasseur said, "Part of this is the strategy, part of it is the time management. When you have the pace, it's easier to manage situations. This is coming with confidence. It's much more calm on the pit wall, and it's the best way to take a decision, and everything is going in the same direction, and it's a smooth environment. The situation is you have to put everything together, and when you start to go in the right direction, everyone is pushing, everyone is more calm, everyone is more confident. It's the opposite when you have a negative spiral. We made a good step with the car over the winter, and even the last part of last year. Everybody is much more confident in the team and more calm. We're doing a good job together."